Jesus said to the 12, "Do you want to leave yourself too?" And Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of everlasting life." Those words spoken by Peter, I hope and pray, is the prayer of each one of us who gather here this morning. Because we know that the Word has nothing to offer. Because all the promises and all the possessions of the Word are not going to guarantee that we are going to live in peace now and forever afterwards. And that's why today the church selects that first reading. Take from the book of Joshua. We know that Joshua was the successor of Moses, because God told Moses that because you even distressed me together with the people, none of you who left Egypt will enter the promised land. And after he passed on, by laying on the hands his direction that God has given him to lead the people, Joshua now entered to the Jordan. And while the chosen people mixed with the Amorites, they begin to play the game. I am going to do like them. I am going to believe like them. So I will mingle with them and I will be accepted. And Joshua saw that this was going to be something that the people are going to turn away from that God who promised and fulfilled the promise. And so Joshua today gathered the people and said, "Whom you want to serve? On my part, my family will serve God. Whom do you want to serve? The gods of Egypt that your father worshipped? The gods of the Amorites? Whom do you want to serve?" And the people said, "We will be with you. We will serve the Lord of Jacob, Abraham, Jacob, and our successors." Why? Because we know that He is the God who protects us and brought us to fulfillment of the promise. In the gospel today we have another choice. And today Jesus, for these 5 weeks, has been talking about the bread of life. Because the gospel is sudden and is to the point. Jesus knew who is going to believe in Him or not. Not only in His time, but even 2,000 years later. We know that there are Catholics who do not believe in the real presence. And we are not going to say this because we want to be nasty. Because we know that sometimes they walk up the aisle and they think they are receiving a piece of wafer and some drops of wine, and they think that they are doing this because of commemoration of the Lord. Because the way we present ourselves when we enter the church, and the way we also with demeanor of clothing, and also with the way we receive, and the way we live at communion time, we don't show that we really believe in the real presence. And that's why Jesus today, He said, "Unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you." And why? Because He knew that this is the foundation of why He was incarnate. Et verbum caro factum est, et habitabit in nobis. And the Word became flesh and live among us. And not live among us in the Word, but He lived in an excellent way in the real presence of the Word. And that's why Jesus said at the Last Supper, "And this is my body, which will be given for you. And this is my blood, will be shed for you." And then Jesus really testified that this is the everlasting covenant by which He unites us with Himself and with the Father, to the power of the Holy Spirit. But today, I like to focus on that second reading. As soon as you're leaving the church today, you are going to see an insert from our 6 bishops of New Jersey. And they are concerned, our bishops, because what we are going to deal in a few months in our state is the prestige and the sacrament of marriage. And we need to understand that we Catholics, I always call us the sleeping giant, need to really get involved in this. if we want our next generation to remember us, and we will have also something to offer to them as foundation of by which they live. And today St. Paul gives us a great lesson. Many people do not understand St. Paul, and so they say St. Paul was a man chauvinist. But if you listen to St. Paul today and look why he wrote what he wrote, you have to understand it by that last sentence of the reading. And I'm going to quote it to you. This is a great mystery. A mystery that the human mind cannot understand. But I speak this in reference of Christ and His church. So St. Paul is taking Christ and His church, the groom and the bridegroom, and you are going to see what they did for each other, and that same union that they have among them is referring to the sacrament of marriage. Do you tell me that Christ and the church, there is something wrong with them? When He Himself loved the church so much that He was incarnate, He becomes slave, He was clothed with this nature, He was subject to food, He was subject to illness, He was subject to rejection and even death. And that's why He said, there is no greater love than that, than one laid down for the one he loves. So if Jesus Christ loved the church so much that He made her His bride, how much more that union between Christ and the church, and the return the church in her obedience to Him, she was faithful to Him over 2,000 years. And what the church gave Him? Martyrs, men and women of every age and time, faithful to the teaching and led an example for us to follow. And that is what the church is all about. The church is faithful to the Verbus Christus, to the very word of Christ. And she's faithful to that word because those words are not spoken by anyone, but are spoken by her groom. That she loved Him so much because in return He is going to make her so beautiful, without no spot, without no blemish, without no wrinkle, so that together they will be presented to the eternal Father, to the eternal banquet of the wedding banquet in the eternal heavens. And that's why St. Paul said, you have to be subject to each other. What did Jesus say? I come not to be served, but to serve, and to give my life for the one I love. So if this God, who is so powerful, who became human, and taught us a lesson by His poverty that He endured, He served the needs of each one of us, as He said, I am not called to be served, but to serve. So each one of us has to come to that notion that we are in the church to serve. Many people think that the priests are here to sign checks and to say, this is the way it's going to be. If that is the case of a priesthood, I leave tomorrow. The priest is there to build community and build them on solid teaching, on the foundation of the magisterium, together with the Word of God, which is the foundation of what